Good evening to one and all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you, dear. First of all, I'll welcome our today's eminent speaker, Mr. R. Gautam. Sir, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Myself, Dr. Tarun, from Tolani Institute of Commerce, on behalf of Tolani Institute of Commerce, managed by Gandhiam College Board, I welcome you all for this wonderful evening and wonderful session too. Yes, participants. Hope I'm audible to everyone. We have with us, thank you, dear. We have with us our eminent speaker and our eminent speaker and a resource person on today's seminar, that is corporate debt restructuring, Mr. R. Gautam. Mr. R. Gautam holds a national level record for writing maximum research papers on accounts written and published by individual in India Book of Records. His area of research interest includes taxation, finance, and entrepreneurship. His teaching interest includes accounting, finance, and management. His works sorry for the interruption. His works are well organized with various awards, of which Best Educational and Research Development Services, Young Researcher Award are noteworthy. Sir, we on behalf of Tolani Institute of Commerce welcome you once again for today's national seminar on corporate debt restructuring. So, without wasting a time, I'll ask Gautam sir to take over the session. Gautam sir, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I once again thank the Tulani Institute of Commerce for having invited me again for a seminar on corporate debt restructuring. And I hope there will be some sort of fruitful takeaways after this session. So without wasting much of the time, so let me start sharing my screen. And I hope I am completely audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the today's topic for discussion is corporate debt restructuring. So let's. So how we are going to proceed about this topic today is basically with regard to we are going to understand first of all what is a debt restructuring, and then we will proceed further with regard to corporate debt restructuring and how the corporate debt restructuring happens in a real life situation, right? So this is how we are going to proceed today. Okay, so first, as I told you, let's understand what is a debt restructuring, right? So debt restructuring is basically a process which is used by the companies, individuals, and even countries to avoid the risk of defaulting. What is mean by risk of defaulting means you would like to avoid the situation of being bankrupt, right? You avoid the situation of being bankrupt. So that is a debt restructuring. So normally, when this debt restructuring happens, when the company or the individual feel that he no longer is capable of repayment of debt, is almost nearing insolvency. I won't say he is in an insolvent position, but he realizes or the company realizes that they are almost in the stage of almost nearing the stage of insolvency or bankruptcy. So for which then to make sure that the company is going on, right, to make sure it is continuing its operation, it will enter into some sort of negotiation with the creditors as well as other parties who have lended the money to the company, and they will try to avoid the situation of bankruptcy. So often, if you see, debt restructuring happens due to a financial turmoil, and it would be done in such a way there is a win-win situation, right? What is the win situation for the company? It is saved from being bankrupt, being declared as insolvent, and and the same way it should also be benefiting the creditors in some way, because it is their money which the company is having, and it should also be designed in such a way that it should be designed in such a way that to make sure, all right, everything is going on well, right? So even the creditors benefit out of that particular program. So that is the idea behind the concept of debt restructuring. So, what are all the ways normally which the company use to achieve this debt restructuring? Right? What are all the ways? Right? One way is there are three different methods or ways through which this debt restructuring is happening. One is debt for equity swap. This is one method, and the other method is bondholders haircuts, and the third one is informal debt repayment agreement. So these are all the different methods to achieve the debt restructuring. So what is this debt for equity swap, right? What is this debt for equity swap, right? So as a creditor, the company would have granted, the creditors would have granted some amount of loan to the company. And what happens in this debt for equity swap means, instead of having the debts in the company will offer and will make a deal to the creditors to ensure that they convert that debt into equity. So from the position of creditor, now they will become like a shareholder, right? So when they will normally use this approach, that is the next question, when they will go for this debt for equity swap. See, this largely happens for the companies who are having a large kinds of assets and liability, but they have a little value for the creditors, right?
सॉरी सड़कों
So,
का नाश हो रखा है
Amit sir, can you unmute yourself?
सॉरी
Sorry,
सर
mute
सॉरी
yourself. Mute yourself.
सॉरी सॉरी
Okay,
सॉरी
fine,
इट
fine.
वाज just by chance
Okay, fine. Okay. So this when normally this happens in the situation means the creditors does not want the company to go into the bankruptcy. Instead of allowing it to go into a bankruptcy, it wants to make sure that the company is going as a going concern, right? So at that time, sometimes creditor will allow the continuous to operation. But there is because when you go for debt restructuring, automatically when you are converting your debt into ownership, it automatically means the company has to dilute his or their ownership with regard to the company, because you are converting your large amount of debts into an equity, which means the ownership dilution will happen. So this is the debt for equity swap.
So one
Then,
question, can I interrupt, sir?
yes.
Sir, it means that it is like that, na? Like creditors doesn't want to go for the company into bankruptcy, and directly they should transfer the ownership into equity,
Yeah.
isn't it, sir? Instead of going for bankruptcy.
Yes, instead of allowing the company to go into bankruptcy,
Yes,
they will
sir.
opt for this offer.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Because,
Sorry to disturb you, sir.
yeah. No issues. So bondholder haircuts. What is this bondholder haircut? Means here there is another situation where the company, if they are having some outstanding bonds with them, right? And we all know bonds are also the part of the debt instruments, and they will go for some repayment negotiation. They will talk with the bondholders, and they will go for a negotiation to redeem the bonds at a very discounted level. So how this could be negotiation can be happening? Either they will ask for reduction of interest, or they will ask for reduction in the principal payment. So this is called a bondholders haircuts. Haircuts, they mean here nothing but the discounts. They will talk with the bondholders. They will request them either for less interest, or they will also request for reduced principal payment, so that the company could survive. Then informal debt repayments agreements. This is like it won't happen like Amit sir. Can you mute yourself? That would be better,
Sir, is it by chance? Just a minute, sir. Just
because we could
sir.
hear the noise, your background noise.
Okay, sir. I'm just so sorry for the inconvenience once again.
All those bike sounds we could hear.
Is it mute?
No, sir, not yet. Amit sir,
Is
not
it
yet.
muted?
No, sir, not yet.
Okay, just a minute. Just a minute, sir. Just a minute.
Okay, fine. So this is the next concept is nothing but an informal debt repayment agreements, right? So what happens here is, here informally the company will ask for repayment terms, right? They will ask for some sort of relaxation from the creditors or the borrowers, for some relaxation or some lenient repayment terms, so that they can survive for a little longer time. And here what happens in the sense, like they could either ask for a lenient repayment terms, or they will also ask for writing off some portion of their debts. So that's why they call it as an informal, right? It goes on an informal basis, and between a negotiation, it will happen in the form of negotiation, right? So Tarun sir, your mic is also disturbing, sir. It's like, yeah,
Sorry, sir.
perfect. Thank you,
My
thank
mistake.
you. Yeah. So this is with regard to informal debt repayment agreements. So normally this is a most affordable method, but this happens through a negotiator. Again, here just because the company is suffering, creditors won't accept. Here also they will expect for some win-win situation between each other. Right? I am foregoing some debts for you means, what is the benefit that I am going to get out of this foregoing? That would be much decided. Okay, now let's talk about corporate debt restructuring in India, right? How this scheme has been introduced in India. So basically, the corporate debt restructuring scheme, it was a scheme which was introduced by Reserve Bank of India on 23rd August 2001, right, for implementation by banks and financial institutions for realization of amount of debts from the debtor who are not able to pay the amount in full. Later, it was also it was also taken up to the corporate. So in 2001, this scheme was introduced, and this scheme proves to be really beneficial for companies which have very good operating efficiency, but still suffering due to oh, debts problem, too much of debts problem, right? So that would be better. So how, what is the CDR mechanism which we were talking about this? So basically it's a voluntary agreement, right? So it's a voluntary agreement between a debtor and a creditor. So who is a debtor? The concerned corporate is a debtor, and the creditor, it's a voluntary agreement, or sometimes or between the creditors and the creditors. But the 75%, right, to ensure the CDR mechanism is happening, at least 75% of the creditors of the company should be willing to go for the CDR mechanism. So it's like a super majority is required. If say for example, if you have 10 creditors, at least 8 creditors should accept for the CDR mechanism. Otherwise, what will happen? You cannot execute the CDR mechanism. So when this again can take place, when you have a multiple bank accounts and consortium, and your aggregate outstanding is around 20 crores and above, you can choose for CDR mechanism. If your aggregate account or aggregate outstanding amount is 20 crores and above, you can company can think of going through this CDR mechanism. So when you go for the CDR mechanism, it will cover all categories of assets in the books of members creditor classified in terms of RBI Prudential Assets Classification Standards, right? So if you take RBI, it will classify asset list standard assets, substandard assets. That is so in the CDR mechanism, when you go opting for CDR scheme, it will automatically cover all the class of assets which you are having. So the cases of restructuring are covered in category 1 and category 2, right? So we will see all these things. So what are the objectives behind the CDR mechanism? Why the RBI wants to suddenly introduce the scheme of CDR mechanism? The objective is so simple. First, they want to ensure timely and transparent mechanism for restructuring, right? Through CDR, they want to ensure there is the CDR is happening at the prompt time. Say, for example, if you are going to take so much of amount of time to make for debt restructuring, that will further hit the company, right? Because the company is already suffering from a huge loss, right? It is not for loss, it's already suffering from huge debt, which it's not capable of repaying. So you have to execute it on time, right? Within a specific period of time, and the mechanism is happening transparent, right? There is no insider things which are happening. The CDR framework needs to ensure there is a transparent restructuring which is happening, right? Then the second objective is to preserve viable corporates from external and internal uncertainties, right? One other reason why the company is objective of CDR is to prefer viable corporates. Viable corporates means they have the potential to do well, right? They are doing well, either they are doing well, but or they are having the potential to do well in the business arena. But due to certain uncertainties, right? Due to certain, it could be either an internal uncertainty or an external uncertainty. For example, now the present situation is COVID-19 pandemic, right? So this is an external uncertainty which none of the companies have experienced it. So those internal and external uncertainties should not affect the good performing or the company which is having a very good caliber to perform, right? So to preserve such viable corporates, the CDR mechanism was introduced. Then minimize the losses to the creditors, right? And if you are going to make the company bankrupt, again it is a huge loss for the creditor, because when the company becomes bankruptcy, enters into the stage of bankruptcy, even the creditors lose the amount which they have given to the company. And say, for example, if the company is going to be a large corporate, right, very high business firms, then obviously what will happen? It's a huge loss for the creditor. So creditor, why they are giving it to the company, why they are giving the money to the company, assuming that this company will perform better, and creditors are also the stakeholders of the company. So it is also equally important to protect even the creditors, because they have trusted the company and they are given the money to the company. So to minimize the loss, they want to go for the this CDR mechanism wants to minimize the loss. Apart from this, there are also other stakeholders like creditors. There are also other stakeholders, shareholders are there, and many other stakeholders are there. Even they are all trusted the company, that the company will go good, and based on which only they have made their investment, and they want to minimize the loss. Then another objective of CDR mechanism is to coordinate the restructure programs, right? To make sure that they design the CDR program in such a way that the company gets out of this unfortunate situation. Right? It doesn't mean the debts will become nil. Please don't misunderstand like that. Here they will try to take away from the company from a very difficult situation of entering into the bankruptcy. Right? And finally, they will also try to ensure that there is a mutual benefits for the parties involved, both the company as well as the, so both debtors and creditors, they should have the proper benefits. It should be, as I already pointed, it should be win-win situation, right? It should not be like the company loses and the creditor win, or the creditor loses and the company wins. So it's not like that. The system seeks to ensure, the system seeks to ensure that there are mutual benefits for the party. So, what are the features of this CDR mechanism? Basically, it's a non-statutory mechanism which has been introduced, uh, and it's a voluntary system because debtors and creditors, they voluntarily come up and agree for this CDR mechanism, and it's not applicable. I told you, if you see in the very beginning, it is applicable for multiple accounts. So, if you are associated with a single account, then you cannot. And if you are associated with only one institution, one single account, one financial institution, one single account, then you cannot go for CDR scheme. So it should be like multiple accounts, multiple financial institution, putting together, your aggregate outstanding is 20 crore and above. In that case, you can opt for CDR scheme. And when it comes to CDR scheme, it is applicable only to standard and substandard assets, right? So assets classification, I hope most of you would be aware, right? So it is applicable. They will take consider only the standard and substandard assets. So what are the advantages of corporate debt restructuring? All right, it allows a business to gain control of its finances, because now what is the current situation of the company? It has lost the control over its finance, and now what it will do? They try to once you adopt this CDR scheme, and if the CDR outcome is successful, right? If it is proving to be a beneficial one, then automatically businesses will gain control over its finances. They have lost control over their finances, and that's why they are entering the stage of an insolvency or bankruptcy. But if the CDR scheme, if the CDR is planned properly and executed properly, they can again gain back the control they lost over their finances. Then, so once you gain your control over your finances, it improves the credit score, right? So previously, when you are running out of funds, your credit score would have been affected, deliberately affected, and that would also minimize the company's capacity or the capability to, what to say, capability for borrowing more funds, so that would have been affected. But now, after if the CDR is successful, it will improve your credit scores. Then engages the help of the third party, right? So even I told you, it happens to a third party negotiator, so it also helps the third party. So what are the disadvantages of this CDR mechanism? Corporate debt restructuring places a hold on new credit application, right? Already your company has nearly seen a debt experience, and you have come back. So when you are coming back, it will hold a new credit application. So credit terms would be completely, you may not enjoy the same kind of credit enjoyment. The companies cannot expect the same sort of credit enjoy, the credit worthiness which they enjoy. It could not be possible, right? Because of this CDR scheme. And when you are going for CDR scheme, automatically it won't look good to the public. The public will feel that your reputation would have got damaged, right? So that is a big thing. But still, companies have to go for the CDR, because otherwise they will lose their operation. They will end up in a bankrupt situation. But still, these are some of the possible disadvantages for the company when they opt for this CDR scheme. And next time when the investors look into your firm, they will think twice before investing in your company. So, what is the corporate debt restructuring process? How it happens? So, it happens to four different stages. One is a consultation process, then negotiation process, then liquidation of assets, then finally restructuring process. So, four different stages are involved in the corporate debt restructuring process. So, consultation, negotiation, liquidation, and restructuring. So let's see what happens in the consultation process. See, business debt restructuring is nothing but not a complicated thing. It's like just a loan agreement between the debtor and the creditor, right? And what will happen? The lender or the creditor, he will consult with the borrower because the creditors keep monitoring the company, right? Because they are given the company, so they continuously monitor the assets and liabilities position of the firm. So what they will do in this stage, at one point of a time, creditors would have realized that the assets of the company is much lesser than the liabilities of these firms, right? The liabilities of this firm, and they could realize that if this situation is going to continue, there are chances that the firm could not repay back the money, or the company could not repay back the money. So what they will do, right? So what they will do, they will conduct a series of consultation with the borrower. When they feel that it is moving towards a dangerous thing, they will conduct a series of consultation with the borrower, right? They will conduct a series of consultation with the borrower, and during these consultations, they will go for a thorough financial analysis, right? What is financial analysis? Nothing but they try to go with regard to assessing the company's overall financial situations, right? So this is, and here only they will go for a thorough analysis of whether the company financial obligations are good enough to meet off. Or in other words, they will try to compare the cash flows of the company with the company's financial obligations. Because when you compare the cash flows of the company with the firm's financial obligation, it is easy for the firm, right? It is easy for the firm, right, to sorry, not for the firm, it is easy for the even the creditors to understand whether this company could pay off this debts. So this is what happens in a consultation stage, very first step of the CDR process. Then comes the negotiation process. So once consultation is done, right, and the guy and the people found, the creditors found out that this company could not pay back the money, it is actually entering the stage of bankruptcy. They will have a deal with the borrowers, right? They will have, the lender will settle an agreement with the borrowers, creditors and lenders, right? Here why the negotiation is, as I already told you, 75% of the creditors should accept the CDR scheme. Only then they can execute it. So here, right, the main idea here, they will try to arrive that consensus. They try to make sure at least 75% of the creditor accept to the CDR mechanism. So the negotiation process happens here, right? So once that is done, once all the discussions, all such things happening, automatically what will happen? The lender can proceed to implement the solution agreed upon. Finally, they will arrive at one consensus, both the borrowers as well as the creditors, lenders. So once that negotiation is successful, then they will proceed for the implementation of the solution. Now, now the company has obtained the 75% credit, assuming 75. If the minimum requirement is 75%, it is well and good if even the 100% credit is successful, right? So once the lender is, once the company finds that it is quite easy that the creditors have accepted the CDR scheme, they will go for liquidation of assets, right? So they will go for liquidation of asset. So what they will try to do first, immediately they won't go for liquidation of asset. They will try to restructure the existing debt, right, for a payment of large amount of money. Even after that, if it could not require, they will go for liquidation of asset, right? So when they are going for this liquidation process, it doesn't mean like they will sell off the asset at a very minimum price. The concept of liquidation of assets is coming into the picture because they want to gain some amount of profit from this liquidation strategy. They want to gain some sort of profits, because if you can generate more profits, it will add to the cash flow, so that people it will be capable for repayment of money, right? So that is the liquidation of assets. Then finally comes the stage of the restructuring. This is the stage where actually the company will enter into the restructuring agreement, and the contracts will be signed and the agreements will be executed, right? So here only the scheme would be finalized, how the payment has to be made, what are all the relaxations which the creditor is willing to give for the company, as well as the creditors will specify the terms and conditions, right? The creditors will give the terms and conditions under which the company, if the company follows all these norms, we are willing to go for this restructuring. So here only both the thing, and the company will also give its consent. Okay, we are willing to follow whatever that is there in the CDR scheme. So that, and they keep monitoring also. Creditors keep monitoring whether the company is for what to say, they are obeying the what and all things that are there in the CDR scheme, whether they are executing, they are working. So here now creditors will have a little more control over the company than they had previously, right? Than they had previously. Now they will have a very tight control to monitor, because their concern is if we leave them again there is also chances this will go back to the stage of uh, what to say. Again, they might enter into the stage of insolvency. So this is the only option, right? It's like you are having only one option, right? Yeah, and the creditors want to ensure that CDR outcome is successful, right? Even after doing CDR, if it's still going to be a negative response, still it is not possible. There is no chance but to go for a bankruptcy. So that's why when they are designing the CDR terms and conditions, they must be very careful, right? Uh, to ensure that the outcome is positive, right? So that's why they will really do yeah, wonderful, how to say, they do a wonderful planning to ensure the CDR outcome is successful, right? So this is the restructuring process. Now, what is insolvency? Most of us will be aware, right? It is like nothing but a situation where the liabilities of the person or a firm is more than the assets. Right? I have my liabilities 10 lakhs, but my assets is worth only 2 or 3 lakhs. Then that is the chance that we might enter into the state of insolvency. Right? What is actually an insolvency? Means the company does not have enough cash or not even a sufficient amount of cash to meet their obligations, right? Whether it could be a debt obligation, or even it could be your day-to-day payment to be made for day-to-day business operations. Both would be very difficult for the company to go further, right? So this is an insolvency. Right? And just a mere insolvency does not afford enough ground for lenders to petition for involuntary bankruptcy or force a liquidation. So just because I say the company is insolvent, lenders won't allow you because they have given you the money. That's why again in insolvency case you have to obtain the consent of the borrowers. You have to obtain the consent of the borrowers. Sorry, you have to consent of the lenders before you file for right? Okay, what is a corporate insolvency? A corporate is considered to be insolvent if it is unable to pay its debts, right? If it is unable to pay its debts, then we can say that a company is heading towards insolvency, right? There are two tests for corporate insolvency. There are two steps. What are those two tests? One is a cash flows test, another one is a balance sheet test. What is right, what is a cash flow test, right? They will consider what is the cash flow position and what is the debt position on the payment day. If the cash flow, or I will put it in this word, if the debts are more than the cash flow, then we can say the company is heading towards the insolvency. Then there is something called as a balance sheet test, where they will try to compare, what they will try to compare assets and the liability position. If liabilities are more exceeding than the assets, then they would say the corporate is moving towards the insolvency, right? So the corporate insolvency is also a very serious problem, because, and especially if it's going to be a public limited company where public hold a majority of shares, it's a real concern for the firm. So, management of corporate insolvency. What are the objectives behind managing the corporate insolvency? So, the idea behind the management of corporate insolvency is to restore the uh, profit capability of the company, right? Once the company feels they are going to go for an insolvent, they are heading towards the insolvent position, the management will go for a strategy to find out what could be done to improve the position. So, what are all the objectives? First one is to restore the debtor company to profitable trading, right? So, restore the company from the unfavorable position to a profitable unit. That is the main idea behind the management of corporate insolvency. Then exploit the returns to creditors as a whole, right? Exploit the returns to creditors at the whole. So they, at the same time, they want to make sure that they are paying the proper returns to the creditor. Then set up fair and equitable system for tracking of the claims. So here you have to really look upon what is the exact claims that the company is having. What are all the total amount of debts which the company is having, which is falling, and they will also what to say, they will also classify them on the basis of which should be going first, which payment is due very soon, which payment is which is long for another 5 years or 6 years. So they will keep tracking all the uh, system, through the system, very well established, they will keep tracking of the debts or nothing but the claims. Then finally, another objective is identification of failure and take appropriate action against the guilt of mismanagement. And another important thing is so simple. Why this all these problems is happening? Because somebody is done a mismanagement. They have not did their, somebody in the top management, they have not done their duty properly. It is because of this reason that the company has reached this stage. So again, so they should not be left, right? Just because we are concentrating in addressing the corporate insolvency, they should not be left, right? They should not be left idle, right? So the management of corporate insolvency will also focus on why the failure has happened. What are all the reasons why this situation has happened? Where the corporate has gone wrong? What it has planned and what it has executed? Is the company failed to monitor the deviations? Is it because of that? Or is this because of any negligence it has happened? So all such things, and they will also find who is the guilty person, who is responsible for this mismanagement, and taking appropriate actions against it. So this is with regard to management of corporate insolvency objectives. Then there is also something called as a cross-border insolvency, right? What is a cross-border insolvency? It's nothing but where the insolvent debtor has assets and creditors in more than one country. Say, for example, if the company is having assets and liability in more than one country, then that is called as a cross-border insolvency. So, the next question is when the cross-border insolvency will happen, right? When the cross-border insolvency will happen, right? Companies, when they have dealings with parties outside the India, outside other countries, then they will have this cross-border insolvency. The company may own interest in properties in other countries. In that situation, also the cross-border insolvency can happen. Liabilities may be owed to you borrow from even people from other nations, right? Even in that case, the cross-border insolvency could happen, right? So this is again furthermore risky when you are having debts with so much of company and your company is totally reaching towards insolvent, means you are not only answerable to the creditors in India, you are even answerable to the people in the foreign nations, and your assets in the foreign nations, everything will have to be evaluated. So this is the cross-border insolvency. So what are the risks associated with this cross-border insolvency? There are so many risks which are associated with the cross-border insolvency. The first instance, it's very difficult to identify and locate the debtors asset because I am having my business across different nations. It is quite difficult for the assessors or the lender or the third party in the Cdr scheme to locate what are all the assets they have in foreign nations, and locating the assets in the foreign nation. Then how to what is the status of the assets there in the foreign nation. So all these things are a very difficult task. Then converting the assets into monetary form, that is another major task. Different country have different values for their assets, right? And it is again a tedious task to convert the assets into the monetary aspects, right? Because everything when they go for liquidation process, this is a major challenge. Then another risk is identifying and reversing any voidable or preference transaction which occurred prior to the administration, right? So sometimes what happened, there are certain which could not be reversed, right? Certain transactions the management would have entered into with the other people, and because of which, right, this must be happening. So identifying those voidable transactions, right, identifying those voidable transactions or preference transaction is also a very tedious task when the insolvency happens in a cross-border level. Then another major problem is identifying the creditors and their extent of claim. At least previous situation only in India. But if it's going to be like a multinational from different countries and you are entering a very dangerous situation, means again identifying the creditors from the respective country, assessing what is the total amount paid to them, how we are going to go further, how we are going to convince the creditors of different nations. All these things are really a dangerous thing, and a tedious task, right? Then yes, okay, fine. Making distributions to creditor in accordance with the appropriate authority. Even after doing all such things, when you would like to execute it, when you want to reimburse, when you want to make the repayment to the creditor, again the distribution process is also very complicated because of the involvement of the multiple nations in the process, right? Because every country will have their own norms of uh, payments, all such things, right? So these are all some of the risks which are associated with the cross-border insolvency. Okay, how the Cdr has been structured? So there are the structure of Cdr has three groups. One is a Cdr standing forum, then Cdr empower group, then we have something called as a Cdr cell. All right, this is like a structure of Cdr, right? How the RBI has given the structure of CDR. Three entities, right? CDR standing firm, CDR Empower Group, and CDR Cell. So let's see what is CDR standing forum. It is the topmost tier of the CDR structure, and it will have the representatives, right? It will have people appointed from financial institutions and banks. So normally the chief executive officers of the top financial bank will form the part of the CDR. So if this group only will lay the policy and guidelines for how the CDR Empower Group should follow. Right? I told you the second forum is CDR Empower Group. And this CDR standing forum will only give you the guidelines of how the scheme has to be done. Right? What are all the points that has to be kept in mind while framing the policy? What are all the things which could be considered for guidelines, which should not be considered for guidelines? All those things the CDR standing forum will give you. Furthermore, it will also evaluate both the subsequent groups' decisions like CDR Empower Group and CDR Cell. Whatever decisions they are doing, they will conduct a review of this, whether it is practically feasible and will it generate you the fruitful results. All these things will be all these things will be carefully reviewed by the core group, and only after their approval the assisting functions would take place. Then comes the next category tier, CDR Empower Group. As I already told, they are the second tier of the CDR scheme, which normally contain the executive directors. First category, CDR Standing Forum, which will consist of chief executive officers of the concerned financial institutions or banks. And in case of a CDR Empower Group, it will have the executive directors of the financial institution. Right? So what they do is they will critically analyze the reports received from the CDR cell, right? And if they find some of the cases, if there would be many companies which would have opted for the CDR, right? So in that case, all those cases would be evaluated, and this Empower Group will make a recommendation to the CDR cell with regarding which case is so potential, which has to be taken care of. Okay, well, then finally comes CDR cell. This is the lowest tier cell, which will do the execution process of the CDR based on the advice received from the CDR standing forum as well as the CDR Empower Group. Right. So how they will determine the potential viability of a case, which should be given first, which should not be given, which should be given the first priority, which should be given the least priority. These things would be critically analyzed based on, say, for example, they will consider IRR, internal rate of assessment, break-even point, cost of capital. So many financial things would be considered, and this would be taken care of. So how the CDR classifies the borrower? It will classify the borrowers into four categories: Category A, Category B, Category C, and Category D. Right? So Category A will consist of companies which are, as I already read, because of the external uncertainties, they have entered the stage. So companies which are not able to pay their debts because of the external factors, like an economic crash or an industry changes, or like this COVID-19 pandemic. Because of these reasons, the company has entered the stage, means those companies will be classified under Category A. Category B will consist of both internal as well as the external. What is internal and external thing? But not only because of the external factors, but also because of it has also weak resources. There is no proper management vision, and vision is not so good. There is lack of professionalism. Because of even due to certain internal factors, the company has come into this position, means then they will be categorized under category B. Then you have something called as category C, where the borrowers are over ambitious. They are over targeting because of their over ambitiousness and because of their over diversification, and without obtaining prior permission from the lenders for the expansion, and they are entered into such situation, means they will be put under category C. And finally, category D is financially they are not at all disciplined. They are having the practice of paying the money very late only. So based on the nature of how the company falls in any of this category, they would be put under the category, and the system will be executed. Okay. Now, this is what which I would like to convey with regard to the corporate debt restructuring. So let's try to understand this CDR with an example of a real company which adopted the CDR, and the outcome is also successful. They were actually experiencing a debt, but the Cdr mechanism has saved the company from entering into a bankruptcy, and today the company is performing quite well. So, which is nothing but Work Hardy Limited. It was basically formed in 1960. This company was basically formed in 1960 as Worley Chemical Works by Dr. Habil Korakiwala. Right? He is a pharmacy graduate from Purdue University, US. So the founder strongly believed, right? This is like a case. So you have to carefully observe. Only then you could really understand what was the problem, right? The founder, he strongly believed, the founder of this company strongly believed that the only way to grow fast, for a rapid growth, they have to be more customer centric. Customer centric means customers focused, right? To satisfy the customer. If we continuously satisfy the customer requirement, we could reach the better heights in a very less span of time. That's what this management believes. So for which what this company did, they encouraged an open culture in the company. They empowered the people so that they work hard, so that there is a continuous process improvement, and at the same time, employees does not feel job to be monotonous or boring. So the company wants the employees to enjoy the job, because once they enjoy the job, they will actively involved in the process, and they will work towards achieving the goals of the company. So this is what this company had in mind. So kindly observe the sequence. It will be really wonderful, interesting. So what happened? This company being a very good company by in 2012, right? By 2012, Botcan was a very, they were really successful. They were a global pharmaceutical and biotechnology organization, and they were still operating in 29 nations with 7,900 employees, right? As of today, at that time. And it nearly had 3 research centers and 12 manufacturing plants. It had its headquarters, even now the headquarters is in Mumbai, and their operations have been widely spread out in various nations like USA, UK, Ireland, and France. So kindly note the important points. Apart from which, the company also had its marketing offices, right? The company has its marketing offices in Russia, Brazil, Mexico, Vietnam, Philippines, Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, Tanzania, Uganda, Nepal, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, Lebanon, Kuwait, right? So all these places, see how the company has drastically grown, right? And it was one of the first pharmaceutical company, right? It was one of the first pharmaceutical company to raise funds through GDR, right? Global Depository Receipt, and the first Asian company to launch recombinant insulin from concept to the market. So they have really achieved so much of things. Really a positively vibrating company, actively performing company. So what happened when this company, as I told you, they were operating in many nations, right? When they want to enter the other globe, right, for their growth, they find that the structure which they have established for the company would be suitable, that they are really confident they the sort of system which they have developed and the sort of culture which they have developed in the company, the philosophical things and the kinds of employees they have, they really feel that if we expand to some other nations, it would be really successful. They can easily meet the uh, global requirements, and they were also successful, right? And this company shares were listed in the Stock Exchange Mumbai, BSE, National Stock Exchange, and Luxembourg Stock Exchange in the form of Cdr. Okay, so kindly observe the thing. So if you take the shareholding of this company, right, the company has nearly 73 point, the promoter alone holds 73.54%, the general public holds 12.04%, and the rest of the shares were owned by the financial institutions. So their business model is basically on these three premises: research, operational excellence, and globalization. They feel if we combine all these three, they would be successful in the market, and they were really successful as well. So now let's talk about how this company has expanded. Right now, let's talk about how this company has expanded. Right, they to enter into other nations, they acquired the Wallis Laboratory, UK-based company in 1997 for $5 billion. Then in 2003, again they acquired CP Pharmaceuticals for around 10.5 million pounds sterling, or in Indian INR it is around 860 millions, right? And this at that time this was the largest ever overseas acquisition by any Indian pharmaceutical company, right? This was considered to be the biggest acquisition by the any Indian pharmaceutical company. And in May 2004, right, Wockhardt acquired a German-based company. See how they are entering different markets, right? They acquired again Is Pharma for 111 million US dollars. So they are now, for their expansion, they are acquiring companies of different nations. And in 2004, right, in 2004, what has happened, right? And in 2004, what has happened? It issued nearly 110,000 zero coupon foreign currency (FCCB), right? Foreign currency convertible bonds of 1,000 US dollars value. The value of the FCCB is 1,000 US dollars, each redeemable at 129.578 percentage of the principal. In case if they are not going to convert it in the past 5 years, kindly note point. This is a very important point which you have to note, because bonds are the debt instrument. They are issuing the debt instrument, and they say if you are not going to convert it in the 5 years, we will redeem it at 129.578%. Then again, what happened in 2006? The company made another acquisition from Ireland, right? Pinewood Healthcare in 2006 for 150 millions, right? So kindly keep note all these points. They didn't stop with this. Again in 2006, what they did, they acquired Demex India to add it to its brand, and it was the fourth largest. Then they also acquired in 2007 Netma Laboratory. It was the fourth largest company, right, for the worth of 265 millions in France. This is happening in France. And in the same year, the Wockhardt again acquired Morton Grove Pharmaceutical. Right, this was leading a general company, and the motive behind all this acquisition is to enter a particular country. Right, so they have seen this as a entry strategy. Now comes the main issue. Now comes the main problem. Right, because the company is now facing the funds, right? They are now experiencing a lack of funds, but they want to acquire more company, right? And their cash flow operations were not enough. So what they did to ensure they expand, they resorted to borrowings. They went to borrowings, right? They want to borrow money and acquire the companies. As a result, what happened? Borrowings uh, from borrowings increased from 498 millions to 42,351 millions in 2008, right? Borrowings have nearly crossed 300 to 400 percentage higher, right? Borrowings increased from 498 million to 42,351 million because they want to keep on acquiring. Okay, so let's understand this. What is they are doing, right? So they now realize the borrowings have drastically gone high, so they want to raise some money to offset this. So what they did, they went for an IPO. Right? They started something called as a Walcott Hospitals, and they went for the IPO in the market, in the share market. But unfortunately, what happened? Only 20%, because this is already suffering. People are saying, right? Only 20 percentage of the shares were subscribed. So only because of the financial turmoil, they could not execute this IPO. So withdrawn that offer. They say we are withdrawing this offer. So failure, first failure, right? Say they started losing their significance. After a great run in the profitability till 2017, then this company started suffering a loss, right? From 1.39 billion loss in the year 2008, it jumped to 10 billion loss in the succeeding accounting year, right? And what was happening in 2008 and 9? Anybody aware? What was happening at that time, 2008, 9, and beginning of 2010? What was another problem that was happening during that time? Anybody aware? During 8, 9, 2008 and 9. Anybody aware what was happening during that time? What was the many countries' economy was facing during that time? Anybody aware?
I think it's an economic crisis.
Excellent, right? Yes, that was the time the entire globe was, they call that as a global meltdown, right? Which happened in America because they have granted loans to everyone and people could not pay it back. So the global meltdown was happening, and that could have also have impacted on this firm, right? Firm's performance. So the loss jumped from 1.3 million to 10 billion in the subsequent uh, period. But their revenues were increasing actually. Their revenues were really increasing, but unfortunately, profitability comes down because of huge borrowing. So much of money went off for paying off the interest, right? Though the revenue shows a growth, there was an increase in the growth of the revenues of the company, but the profitability has considerably brought down. The profitability keeps on declining because of the mounting interest costs, right? So see the problem. Then what has happened? What again happened? They have again raised a secured and unsecured loan from domestic and international markets through FCCB. Again, now what they are doing? Again, they started getting loan because the loss is coming. Loss is heavy from 1.39 to 10 billion. All right. So again, they were getting more money, and 73% of the total company's revenue through the international operation, right? If you see, 73% of the revenue is coming only from the international operation, which means they are not very successful in generating revenue from India. And so because of which they have to enter into complicated derivative instruments like what to say, swaps, forwards, options, all such things. They have to enter the derivative products to hedge themselves against the loss, but still they suffered a very significant loss, and their exceptional items were gone up to 2,510 millions in 2008. Then again, what happened? This exceptional item again bounced back to 5,820 million because I told you they were concentrating on the hedging, right? Financial derivative instruments, right? So like swaps, options, all these things. Unfortunately, there also big loss, right? There also big loss for this firm, and this resulted in a exceptional loss of around 5,820 millions. In terms of they lost so much of money with regard to foreign exchange currency and volatility in the currency. And kindly note that point, in the same year, the company's interest alone contributed to 2,703 millions, representing 65% of the increase in the interest costs. Then, if you could remember what they did in 2004, they issued FCCB. Do you remember? They'll say what they told, we will recover at 129%. Now, what is the year? 2009, 5 years over. What they said, if you are not going to convert it in 5 years, we will redeem it at 129.578%. Now, that is catching their neck. Right now, catching their neck to 2009, already suffering from so many unfortunate situations. Now, the bonds which they issued in 2004, it's now maturing. 5 years is over, right? And these FCC bonds were now being traded at 355 per share, right? They were traded at 355 per share, and the FCCB were convertible at the option of the holder at 486.075, right? But this is the offer which their company gave for converting the FCCB. They thought at least if the bondholders of this, they will get some amount of money. Unfortunately, what happened during that time, the share price of the company, no, it has fallen down to 180 rupees, right, in the market. So what automatically did, bondholders, they called for, they said we want only repayment, we don't want to convert it, right? We don't want to convert our bonds into shares because your shares is already 180 and they feel it is really a loss. So they asked for repayment. Another neck to neck problem for the firm.
Use loss.
Yes, right? So to avoid the possibility of default, right, what they did, they no other choice. Now they have to go for corporate debt restructuring. Because why they went for corporate debt restructuring, you must be clear. Revenue is growing only, right? There is no hit on the revenue. If there is a hit in revenue, something would have happened. But with regard to the revenue is growing, right? Revenue is experiencing a growth. But unfortunately, what is happening? The amount of debt is very high, right? And they have no other choice to go for CDR. And the auditor in the 2008, they have given a very without qualifying our opinion. They have given the statement in their audit report. Let me read it. Without qualifying our opinion, we draw attention to note 34 to the consolidated financial statements with regard to company's ability to repay its loan and related liabilities falling due up to 31 December 2009, being dependent on the company being able to successfully implement the actions proposed therein. Their liabilities for repayment in 2019 nearly amounts to 14,404 million, which is greater than the currently expected cash flows. Note this point, which is greater than the expected cash flows from the business or any committed contracted sources of funds of the company. Beautiful. They have straightly hit the company there, the auditors. As informed by the management, the empowered group of CDR cell has admitted the company to do the CDR scheme. Okay. The company ability to continue as a growing concern will depend only upon the successful outcome of its CDR scheme. So they have clearly stated that if you wish the company to be successful, the CDR scheme, so the outcome of the CDR scheme should be successful. If the CDR fails, again, no other choice, the company has to go back. So what was suggested in this CDR scheme? They said restructuring the package approved by the CDR was uh, right. The existing loan was charged at a rate of 10%. So what they have negotiated, we could divide this 10% rate of interest into two parts. One is a 8% interest, another one is a 2% interest. Right. So what they said, 8% interest you have to pay on a monthly basis, and the 2% of the interest you can convert it into preference share redeemable in the year 2018 from 10 years from now. Okay. And it was also decided that the priority loan would be made available to the company to repay the creditors. Right. They are converting that preference shares. No, that would be used to repay to the creditors, meeting the operational requirements and to settle the derivative losses. So these three are given the first priority for settlement of debt. The scheme says like that. First, you have to utilize it for repay the creditor. Then your company's operational requirements, because you want to continue your operation for which you need the money. So do that for this again. Then the balance you should use for settling the derivative losses which you have entered in the market. Right, which should be repaid in 8 equal installments commencing from September 15, 2010. And there should also be a commitment from the management that they will sell or disinvest the because they were acquiring so many of business, right? And the management also given a commitment that in this period of time we will also sell off certain businesses which are not performing very well between 2009 to 2015. And apart from that, promoters, what they said, we will also bring our contribution over the next 1 year for disinvestment proceeds. Right? We will also bring some additional capital. So the CDR scheme instructed the company to pay the existing rupee term loans in 24 quarterly installments commencing from July 15. So they are, see how the mechanism is easily happening, functioning, right? So the sale proceeds of this investment process should be utilized for paying off the term loans. So secured working capital outside the consortium were proposed to be converted into working capital term loan. Right? They are converting again the loans as a working capital to be paid in 24 installments, and short-term loans should be paid in 20 installments. And what they said, between this time frame from 2009 to 2015, the company should not execute any more new derivative transactions. They should not invest in the derivatives market, right? Without the approval of the CDR same power. So finally, the company took steps based on the scheme. The company took the steps to implement the thing. So during the 2010-2011, the company allocated 1 crore 30 lakh 88,000 893 non-convertible redeemable preference shares of 5 each, and 2 crores 23 lakhs 86,344 convertible redeemable shares of 5 each. So they started implementing the schemes which has been approved by the CDR. So in 2009, they sold this investment strategy. They sold 10 units of 10 out of its 17 hospitals to Fortis chain for 9,110 million. And in 2009, they disinvested their animal healthcare business to French company. And the sale consideration, as mentioned in the CDR scheme, was used to pay off the debts. So as promised, I told you, promoters also promising to bring money. So they also brought the share contribution of 800 million as a part of the package, and nearly priority loans worth 2,160 were dispersed. And in 2012, the company sold off its nutrition business 120 worth 1280 crores to a French dairy company. Again, the proceeds were utilized to pay off the debts as per what the scheme CDR. So finally, since everything went on well, CDRs is a completely turnaround. Actually, the company was nearly facing a debt situation, but the CDR brought back the company, right? Because everything was going well. The concessions given by the lenders and commitment showed by the management and the promoters gave a very fruitful result. Promoters, they fulfill their obligation, and also they ensure that the scheme is very well implemented, and renewed focus on improving efficiency, cost reduction resulted in a better improved performance. Now they saw the company jumping from the escaping from the insolvency position, right? So the company turned around and reported a net profit. Oh my God! In 2011, finally they had a net profit of 905 million, which increased to 3.4 billion in the next year. Very appreciable performance. Uh, Furthermore, it also write off the 5.8 billion and 5.3 billion loans in 2011 and 12 of the exceptional items, and the borrowed funds started declining from 42 billions in 2008 to 30 billions in 2012, which drastically resulted in the coming getting down of the interest cost, right, from 2.1 billion to 2.1. It was previously 3.4 billion. Now the interest cost has drastically come down to 2.1 billion, and the debt equity ratio was now healthy around, right? It was 2.1 uh, into 6.1. Now the debt equity. So for them, as by the because of the very proper planning, the CDR mechanism helped the company get out of this tough situation, the financial losses, and the company is now even successfully operating as one of the well-reputed global firm. So with this, I would like to conclude my session. I express my sincere thanks to the Tulani Institute of Commerce for having given me this wonderful opportunity, and I hope you would have got some sort of fruitful learning from this session. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a wonderful session. You gave us a current example of Bokahat Limited, sir, and really we understood like how they were facing the huge losses in the years. And in 2004, coming back to 2009, they have to we had to convert into foreign currency convertible bonds with a percent of 129 percentage. But really, by applying CDR mechanism, how they turned around and really converted themselves into a profit, and by selling some of the companies which were not giving them profits. So I think, sir, this was the best example. I hope everybody, those who are attending the session, may have understood with the live example which you gave. Thank you, sir. I'll request participants to any question if they want to raise to sir, please they can go ahead. Participants.
Good evening, Gautam sir.
So we have our principal ma'am, Ashna Kela ma'am. She's with us, sir. Gautam sir.
Gautam sir, good evening. Am I audible?
Ma'am, you're audible.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Gautam sir? Just a minute, ma'am. I think he's facing the problem with the network issue.
Okay.
Yeah, ma'am, just a minute, please.
It's okay.
Ma'am, please hold on one minute. Gautam sir, am I audible? I think by mistake he has left the meeting, I suppose, ma'am.
Acha. Okay.
Yeah, he will be joining soon, ma'am. I think with the other one, she will be joining soon. Yes, participant, you'll get the feedback link in your chat box only. Okay, let's join first of all. If you have any query regarding today's seminar, or if you wish to ask some questions, you may please. Let's join once again. Meantime, I'll just forward the link to you to fill up the feedback form. Thank you, Amit sir.
Sir, sorry, sir.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes. So we have with us our principal ma'am, Dr. Ashna Kela. Ma'am, over to you, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening, madam. Good evening.
Sir, first of all, we are very much thankful to you whenever we ask you within a short period of time, you say yes to us and you're sharing your expertise. So on behalf of whole Tolani Institute of Commerce family, I thank you. Further in this topic, sir, kindly throw some lights on Vijay Mallya case.
Actually, madam, with regard to the Vijay Mallya case, actually, it is not like a situation where they were experiencing a revenue growth and it is affecting the company. I think with regard to Vijay Mallya case, there is a deliberate manipulation in the financial statements. The company was actually not performing well, but the reports or the financial statements of the firm showed that it is progressing well, because of which the many financial institutions granted more loan to this company, and finally he flied off because he felt that is he could not pay it back. He flied off.
Okay, that's why he could not recover.
Yeah, he could not recover.
Okay, okay. So this example, this case study was really very much interesting. The Work Hard Hospital, you explained us. I think through this case, we have understood the concept very well. So thank you so much once again. And whenever we would like to interact with you, kindly give your consent. In future, we expect the same cooperation from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I also express my sincere thanks to the Tulani Institute of Commerce for having inviting me again, and I will always ensure that I extend my support to your institution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us and for whenever we call you, sir, we are always ready to support us in this webinar, online webinars. Thank you so much, sir. One announcement to participants: please fill up the feedback form for your certificates. Thank you, sir. Shall we wind up here?
Have a nice time ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you, all my fellow colleagues. Thank you, all the participants for devoting your time with this valuable session. Today's session is very interesting because we learned many things regarding Cdr mechanism, and the way the sir has thrown light on this topic, it's really interesting. Sir has covered almost most of the topics, like what are the advantages, disadvantages, cross-border insolvency, structure of Cdr mechanism, and risk involved in Cdr mechanism. So almost sir has covered all the topics related to Cdr mechanism. Cdr process, how does it follow? Structure of Cdr, where it was shown in the VOCAD Limited, where Cdr Empowered Group was formed, and they have instructed how to do Cdr, how to follow Cdr mechanism. It was really wonderful, sir. Really wonderful, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir. Participant, please fill up the feedback form for your certificates. And the certificate will be distributed to you within 7 working days. Please, participant, the certificate will be distributed to you within 7 working days. Please ensure that the personal message should not be sent in, to the mobile number given. 7 working days will be informing to you in the group only. I hope you all enjoyed the session.